Hi, good morning and good afternoon. This is just a quick message to let you know we'll start in a few minutes. We're happy that you're joining us. And if you have questions, you're welcome to raise your hand during the presentation. And I think your line should be muted, but we can take you off mute as needed. We'll start in a few. Okay, well, this is wonderful. I see a number of folks are still joining us. We've got a great group today. And welcome to Wellbeing Week in Law. Today, I'm really privileged to announce or present the session, which is Practicing Joy, Gratitude, and Awe. And we have two scholars from the Penn Applied Positive Psychology program here to walk us through some information. Krista Larson is the Director of Wellbeing at Stinson, and Tara Antonipillai, I always want to put a foreign accent on that, apologize. But she is with us. She is a well-being consultant and the founder of Cultivate. And they are both going to share some techniques and exercise with us so that we learn about discrete positive emotions that we can practice in order to enhance our own well-being. So my name's Gretchen Rose. I am the Director of Human Resources at Cozen O'Connor, and I am going to join this session with all of you and look forward to the knowledge that Tara and Krista are going to present.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gretchen. We're so happy to be here. Really happy to be kicking off Wellbeing Week in Law. I hope everybody has a chance to just kind of take a deep breath and settle in, and really hope that this is just enjoyable and interesting and kind of fun for you. You know, this is hopefully is something that you can take something away from that allows you to try something that is a little bit different. So first, we're going to talk about what are positive emotions. It seems like a bit of an obvious question, but positive emotions, you know, people tend to have a certain way of thinking about it, something that is a kind of pre-existing way that they talk about or think of about positive emotions. And so today we're really going to kind of dig into what the research says about what positive emotions are and how we might be able to practice boosting them a little. When I think of positive emotions, I'll tell you the way that my research informed opinion is that I think of positive emotions that kind of falling into two buckets, right? Positive emotions are sort of things that kind of light you up, right? What are those things that really are energizing to you? And then the other side of positive emotions are kind of like, what are those positive emotions that maybe you don't have as much of, but that you can find ways of kind of boosting a little bit or practicing? So they kind of fall into two camps. I really encourage you, by the way, throughout this presentation, put your questions in the chat. We'd really love to see them. Krista and I may kind of jump in and interrupt each other a little in a friendly way, only because we are very excited about this topic. So defining positive emotions, when we think about what they are, they're really defined as a multi-step process that occurs as a response, right? So that is sort of a whole cycle of things, mostly that you don't think about or have a conscious thought of. You don't make a decision to do them. It's just a way that you respond in your brain. And in terms of where they live, positive emotions are generally thought to kind of live within the limbic system. It's like, I think of it as the old part of the brain, right? The part of the brain that impacts kind of generally how you respond. Parts of the brain like the amygdala, which is responsible for the fight or flight response, and the hippocampus, which hold things like retention and memory, right? All of those parts of the brain and a few others impact where emotions live and how we respond. So these are the types of positive emotions that we'll talk about mostly today. This is not a kind of exhaustive list of positive emotions, but you can see that the things that fall into this category are things like love, joy, gratitude, hope, amusement, pride, serenity. People's faces are blocking my other words, inspiration, and awe. And these are some of the most common forms of positive emotion. There's probably a couple that really resonate with you, right? Things that you kind of think of as bringing you sort of well-being or bringing you joy, or that you really relate to. Right. And I think of this as kind of very interrelated with things like character strengths, right? When I first started learning about both of them, I really thought, oh, now that I know that these exist, I see them everywhere. And when I first started telling my kids, my son said to me, oh my gosh, he said, Mom, he's like, this is Caroline every morning. Tommy, pick your head up, look out the window, like, look at the sunrise. It's so beautiful. And my son, who's 15, is sitting in the car as they're driving over the Key Bridge into Georgetown going, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I don't really care about the sunrise every single day, but it's like people have things that they really tend to gravitate towards, right? And that is, for my daughter, it's awe. For my son, I think it's probably more like amusement or humor or joy, but that you can sort of see those things coming out in people as you start to look for it more as well. All right. Okay, joy is the first one we're going to talk about. And we just picked 3 positive emotions to focus on today, just as an example of what we are kind of really keying in on, so we can really dig in a little bit more. And so joy is really described as being kind of bright and playful, or maybe having a warm inner glow, like the technical term of high valence pleasantness, right? It's sort of an energetic feeling of pleasantness, right? So spending time with a good friend, being surprised by a gift, watching your team win, right? Any kind of celebration often associated with joy. So I'd love it if people can not just think about what I'm saying, but also maybe put in the chat some examples of joy in your life. So what are some ways that you experience joy? All right, let's see. Okay, I like dancing at Zumba, playing with my dog. I can't read them all, they're coming in fast. Being in nature, child's laughter, pets. Okay, there's a lot of pets and a lot of animals in this, which I love. I was just saying to Krista as I was watching this, I remember during the pandemic, I was giving a presentation and someone said to me, like the thing that has gotten me through this pandemic is watching animal videos. Like there's a eagle's nest, and I've watched all these birds hatch, and I've like watched the otters playing at the zoo. And I was like so interested in that. And then when I looked up, there was actually a research study that came out that said watching animal cams boost joy for people, right? They liked to see animals playing, and it was like a really quick, good way of kind of latching on to that type of positive emotion. So I think all of these, and I ice cream would be sort of definitely, ice cream for me is associated with everything good about the world. It's like lazy summer days, like going to the ice cream stand in upstate New York where I grew up. And so I'm with you on ice cream. All right, let's see. Krista, by the way, feel free to jump in at any moment.
I will, thank you. I'm having just so much fun over here reading all of the examples.
I know, they're super good.
It's great. And I think one thing we can take from this too is that it's different for all of us, right? And that's going to be a theme as we continue through this presentation as well, is there's no one size fits all. So it's really fun to see just the variety in the examples that you all shared.
Spring flowers. Trees blooming. Yeah, we could really use that right now. Especially Krista in Minnesota.
A little chilly here. We're working on it.
Okay. Oh, I gotta get out of chat here so that I can keep moving in the presentation. All right, so gratitude. Gratitude is the act of appreciation, recognizing the good things in our lives. Gratitude, I think, can sometimes feel for people, at least in my experience, it's a little saturated. It can sometimes feel like someone is telling you to be thankful for something that maybe you don't feel that thankful, right? And so sometimes I think it's helpful to think about gratitude in maybe a little bit broader way. So not just the things that you necessarily feel thankful for, because we don't always feel thankful and we wouldn't expect people to feel thankful all the time, but maybe kind of broadening that definition to think about something that made you laugh, maybe think about something that you found funny, maybe thinking about something that you found beautiful. So kind of these other ways of thinking about things that are good, as opposed to just maybe a very narrow definition of something that might be considered optimistic or cheery or positive, right? It doesn't always have to look one way. Gratitude can be, you can be really grateful for your super sarcastic colleague who allows you to kind of get through the day, right? Because they understand you and they hear what you're saying, right? It doesn't have to just be like that, you're grateful for things that might be, I guess, considered sort of predictable or routine. You can kind of think outside the box when it comes to gratitude. And so how about things you're grateful for? With that, all that being said, is there anything that folks want to put in, things that are grateful for in the, family, warm weather?
And Tara, while people continue entering their examples into the chat, which is great, please keep them coming. I'll share a memory that I have actually from when Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, who we're going to chat more about in a moment, but when she came and spoke to my positive psychology class at Penn, she shared the example of how she will just thank spaces when she leaves them, right? Like she'll thank her office, just like, thank you, office, for what you gave me for this day, or thank the airplane when she gets off the airplane for getting her to her latest destination. And that's always stuck with me because I think it's such a great example of how simple and like it doesn't have to be a grand gesture necessarily that we're thankful for. It can be those really small things, just moment to moment, that can be points of gratitude for us.
Yeah, I think those are all really good examples. And I recently traveled out of the country for the first time in a long time. And I was so appreciative for like that feeling when I got back to my home that I was happy to be there, right? That feeling of like sometimes going and doing something different and, which we've all been missing a little bit, allows you to, feel grateful for the things that are in your life every day, which sometimes when you're in them, it's harder to see that. So kind of taking that conscious moment to be thankful for those everyday things is great. I love this one. Someone said challenging situations because I always learn from them. That's those can sometimes, I think, be hard things to be thankful for, right? That you have to really be more conscious and try. That's great. All right, let's keep going here. All right, so this is basically the concept of awe is sort of like being overwhelmed, being like thinking something. My husband always says, like, whenever we're traveling, we're at a national park, he always says, "Oh my gosh, this is spectacular." And we mock him for it because he's like, that word is so specific to him and how he feels in that moment. But that's what I think about when I think about awe, that this is spectacular, right? It's like you're looking across a vista, or you are almost physically moved by something that you see or hear or witness. So, and in that way, I think that sense of self-transcendence is really gets at what that sense of awe kind of feels like to us. I mean, people describe, I think in music, it's called like frisson, the musical frisson, where you almost get a sense of chills, like when there's a big crescendo in the music, or you're listening to an opera aria or some music that you love, right? And you feel almost like physically moved by the music. Could be also a beautiful sunset, the birth of a new baby, visiting the Taj Mahal. Those are all great examples. All right, let me hear it. Let me see your experiences of awe. Yeah, I love, like, so many people have things that are views in here. The ocean is a huge one. Something about the vastness of the ocean and the beauty of it, that combination. It's pretty spectacular. These are great. Simple things, sunset. I like that one too, being amazed by others' talents. That's a great one. Giving birth to my daughter. Generosity and goodness, laughing and giggling, especially when it's kids. Those are all great ones. Awesome. Okay. I'm just going to pop into the Q&A real quick, Krista, and see. Oh, yeah, someone put their first time in the Rocky Mountains as their awe experience. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to you, Krista, and you can talk a little bit about why we focus on positive emotions.
Thanks, Tara. And yeah, so now that we know the what of positive emotions, we are next going to look at the why. So why positive emotions? Why do they matter? Why are they relevant to well-being? Why do we have a whole program about them during Well-Being Week in Law? And when discussing the importance of positivity, I actually often find that the best place to start is with first acknowledging the importance of negativity, because negative emotions are important too. And Tara, if we can go to the next slide. We're not necessarily going for all positivity all the time here, right? This isn't a like good vibes only or toxic positivity type of message that we're putting out here. So before we get to talking about all of the great benefits of positivity, and there are many, let's first take a moment to talk about the importance of negativity. And to do this, I'm actually going to borrow an analogy from Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, who I mentioned earlier. She is the leading researcher expert in positive emotions. And she explains the importance of negativity in relation to positivity with the metaphor of sailing a sailboat. So if you've ever sailed or seen a sailboat before even, you probably know that sailboats have two main components. The first part is the keel, right? That piece of the boat that sticks out underneath the water. It's super heavy, and its purpose is to keep the boat upright. The sailboat also has a mast that rises above the water, right? And that's what the sail's attached to. And in our analogy, we can take the keel to be negativity and the mast to be positivity. So if you've ever sailed, you know that you cannot get anywhere without that keel, right? That really heavy part of the boat underneath the water, because if you didn't have it there, you would at best probably just float around aimlessly. And if there was any amount of wind or water movement, you would also be in trouble of capsizing, right? So while it's the wind that gets captured in the sails that hang on the mast of positivity, it's that keel of negativity that keeps us grounded and out of harm's way, right? So the idea here is that we need both the keel and the mast with the sails to keep our sailboat going forward. And so too do we need both negativity and positivity to function most optimally. So our idea with cultivating positivity and really celebrating and honing positive emotions is not necessarily to just eliminate all negativity. However, and if we can go to the next slide here, we also know that negativity is quite heavy, right? So just like the keel of the sailboat is really heavy, so too are negative emotions. And in fact, the research shows that negative emotions are much more powerful than positive ones. So the weight of a negative emotion, to put it another way, it's much heavier than the lightness of a positive emotion is going to feel. The negative likes to stick to us, while the positive tends to bounce off. And this dynamic is what psychologists refer to as the power of bad. And the research of the power of bad demonstrates just that negative emotions weigh much more, they're much more impactful than the lightness of positive ones are. And then on top of this, we can factor into the equation here that we as humans tend to have this negativity bias, right? This thing that has evolved within all of us, this natural tendency to really pay attention to the negatives so that we're able to better scan for threats and just keep out of harm's way, right? So as the saying goes, savoring a sunset is nice, but it's being afraid of the lion that's going to keep you alive. So that's the negativity bias and the power of bad. So bringing this all together, what this means for us when we're working on our well-being is that in order to achieve an emotional balance, we need to outweigh each one of those negative, heavy emotions, the negative emotions, with multiple positive ones. And the exact number of positive emotions needed to outweigh a single negative it's debated quite hotly, actually, in the literature. But it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 positive for every 1 negative on average to achieve just that emotional balance. And what's actually really interesting, if you go back to our analogy of the sailboat, the mast of a sailboat tends to be about 3 times as long as the keel. So we see it working with sailing as well. And Tara, now we can go on to the next slide here.
Sorry about that.
No problem. You're giving a little sneak peek of what's really exciting about positive emotions, which were the impacts of positive emotions on our well-being.
And I don't know about you, Krista, but for me personally in my life, I can think of really concrete examples where my brain kind of loops back to that negative over and over again, right? Like somebody tells you something good, you get good news, you kind of like, you know, it impacts you positively for a little while, but when you're laying in bed at night, the thing that your brain goes back to is the thing that you wish you didn't say, or during the day, or something that someone criticized you about, right? Like, so I think we can all kind of really tap into what that negativity bias feels like if you just think about what your brain goes back to before you fall asleep at night.
And on top of that, we know through the research also that lawyers tend to be a particularly, shall we say, skeptical bunch, right? So we know legal professionals are either by nature or nurture through what they learned in law school, or probably some combination of the two, just a little bit more inclined to be thinking in that more negative mindset, right? So that makes this exercise of really looking for that emotional balance with positivity all the more important. Again, those are just averages. Everybody's experience is unique, but we know that positive emotions have well-being benefits in multiple ways. And that's what this slide here is really intended to summarize. So first, if we actually look into the past, we know that the harmful consequences of negative emotions can actually be undone or healed in a sense to some extent with positive emotions. And then in the present, we know that positive emotions do a whole lot of things for us in the moment when we're experiencing them, including broadening our perspective. So they've been shown to literally expand our range of vision. We see more when we're experiencing positive emotions. And this has sort of a mental cognitive aspect to it as well. The research shows that we're able to see more of the conceptual big picture, if you will, when we're experiencing positivity. We're able to be more creative, more collaborative, better consider new ideas. So a whole lot of benefit in the present moment when we have that positivity ratio and balance figured out. And this is what psychologists call the broadening effect of positive emotions. In addition to the broadening effect, we have what is called the building effect of positive emotions. And this is that last piece there, the future component of the impact of positive emotions. So we know that positive emotions also prepare us for the future. They've been shown to build what psychologists refer to as personal resources. So things like resilience and having better relationships with others. That's the building effect of positive emotions, right? Difficult situations are inevitable. We're always going to encounter some sort of a challenge at some point in the future. And we know that we can set ourselves up for success to navigate those challenges by experiencing positive emotions in the present. We can set ourselves up for the future. So those last two pieces, the present and the future, this is what psychologists refer to as the broaden and build effect of positive emotions. And Tara and I thought, who better for you to hear about the details of positive emotions and broaden and build than to hear directly from Dr. Barbara Fredrickson herself. And as we mentioned, Dr. Fredrickson, she's really the leading expert in positive emotions. She's a professor, a distinguished professor at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And Tara, I believe we have a video queued up of Dr. Fredrickson. We'll take just a moment to get that pulled up here.
We do. Okay, so I am going to switch screens, so bear with me. Hopefully this works. And then we will go ahead and play this. Yes, okay. And if anyone doesn't hear this, or if there's any problem with the audio, just send me a message in the chat, but I practiced before. I think it should work.
The second core truth about positive emotions is that they transform us for the better. They bring out the best in us. Now, one interesting fact about all living things, and for all of you sitting here today, while you're sitting here today, new cells are being born within you. Scientists that have estimated that on average across all different body systems, you could say that people replace 1% of their cells each day. That's another 1% tomorrow, about 30% by next month, and next season, 100%. That's one way of looking at it. Now, certainly that differs across, taste buds change faster than bones, but still, on average, we're turning over like that a lot. And maybe it's no coincidence that it takes 3 months or so to learn a new habit or to make a lifestyle change. Maybe we need to be teaching our new cells. We can't teach an old cell new tricks, perhaps. But one of the things I think is even more exciting is that the latest science suggests that the pace of cell renewal and the form of cell renewal doesn't just follow some predetermined DNA script, that our emotions affect that level of cellular change. And so that's an idea that's completely consistent with the broader lesson within my work, is that positive emotions, in broadening our awareness or opening up our awareness over time, change who we are in the future. Now, what this suggests is that if we increase our daily diet of positive emotions, we change who we are. We change our ways of being in the world in important ways. Now, one of the things that I've come to realize is that changing people's trait or characterological positive emotions can be done, but it's not easy. Okay, it's akin to making a lifestyle change. I think the best metaphor for this is moving a river. It's more possible than moving a mountain, but it's not something that you can do just on a whim and just flip a switch and it's changed. It's something that you do with continual reinforcement and effort. And with that in mind, actually, Sonia Lubomirski's work suggests that it takes as much willpower, lifestyle change, effort, and control as does lowering your cholesterol or losing weight. Okay, but with that in mind, I was very much inspired by some of the newest research on meditation to look at how people might use meditation to elevate trait or characterological positive emotion. And in particular, I've become interested in a form of meditation called loving kindness meditation, sometimes called metta. And what it does is it asks people to cultivate that warm, tender feeling that you already have towards a loved one or even a pet, and really learn to self-generate that emotion and direct it towards yourself, direct it towards people you normally wouldn't feel that to, a neutral person, or people you have difficulties with, and eventually to direct it to all people and sentient beings on Earth. Now, what I've learned from my research on loving kindness meditation is that positive emotions can change. This is what I call the move the river slide, that positive emotions, as people learn this technique over the course, these are novice meditators, over the course of 8 weeks, their positive emotions subtly shift upwards. It's not a whopping increase, but it's statistically significant and it yields really important changes in these people's lives months later. What we learned is that as people's positive emotions increase, their day in, day out positive emotions that you could describe as their trait positive emotions, as they increase, it builds resources. One of the resources that is built is people's mindfulness, their ability to stay in the present moment and attend to subtle differences. Their close and trusting, warm relationships with others are improved over the course of 3 months. These are things that we measured before they took the meditation workshop and then a couple weeks after it ended. And we see improvements there. We see improvements in people's resilience, their ability to bounce back from difficulties and manage their environmental challenges. We also see reductions in people's headaches, aches, pains, stomach pains, so self-reported health symptoms. And in our newest study, we've actually found changes in heart rate variability that suggest that we've increased vagal tone. So what I want to argue with this work is that positive emotions transform us for the better. It's like that butterfly coming out of its cocoon. If we increase our daily diet of positive emotions, we come out 3 months later being better, stronger, more resilient, more socially connected versions of ourselves. And where I'm going in my future work is to look at how that is happening, not just at a level that we recognize in our behaviors that we can self-report on questionnaires, but also how it's changing us at a cellular level, how these increases in positive emotions cascade forward and literally change the way our genes are transcribed and shape who we are at a really fundamental basic level. One thing that is true of all of us, just like all living things, we can all either languish, barely holding on to life, or flourish, becoming ripe with beauty and possibility and remarkably resilient to hard times. And one of the things that we found is that the degree to which people experience positive emotions in their lives predicts whether people will be languishing or flourishing. And one way to think of this is that we don't have to get up in the morning and think, I want to languish today or I want to flourish today. We need to be thinking about the micro moments and follow the light of the positive emotions. Let positive emotions and positivity light our way to the path of flourishing.
I'm going to share
I'm sure that was just another video getting started, but it felt like a very appropriate music entrance into the remainder of our presentation. So thanks for that, Tara. All right, we'll get the slides pulled back up here in a moment, but thank you so much for everybody who is sharing their thoughts and reactions to Dr. Fredrickson's remarks during that video. Again, we wanted to just use that as an opportunity to really illustrate the varied impacts of positive emotions, right? I mean, yeah, exactly, Natasha, very uplifting. To me, it feels really encouraging to know that something as simple as an experience of a positive emotion can impact our well-being in so many different ways and in so many different domains of our well-being also, right? And there we go. Good resilience in the moment, Tara. Way to demonstrate that for Well-Being Week with getting the technology figured out. And that is the perfect segue then into just a couple of quick things we wanted to really pull out and highlight related to what Dr. Fredrickson shared in that video. So here are some ways that we know research has shown that we can impact our well-being with positive emotions. The first one we have here, coping and resilience. We know that we are just better able to manage change and overcome challenges in life, both big and small, with the experience of positive emotions. Next is positive relationships. Positive emotions just help us experience higher quality connections with others, right? I think that social connection and relationships, something that's really been on all of our minds in an increased way these past couple of years during the pandemic, and particularly during those periods of time where we weren't able to connect in person as easily. What the research shows is that in addition to the amount of connection we have with people, the quality of the connection that we have with people is also highly important to our well-being, and positive emotions play a really big role in that quality piece of the equation. We also have mental health listed here. I'm going to get back to that in a moment. There are connections to job satisfaction and workplace engagement, and even life satisfaction. The research shows that people who maintain a high positivity ratio, who experience a lot of positive emotions, they tend to evaluate their lives as more fulfilling. And I want to get back to that mental health piece and just spend a moment here, because I think this is especially important for us as a community, because positive emotions are shown to be highly protective of our mental health. So put another way, positive emotions allow us to take a more proactive, upstream approach to supporting our mental health. And I feel like that point is really important to bring up in this context with it being Well-Being Week in law, because of what we know about the just disproportionately high rates of mental health challenges in our profession. So positive emotions can and really should be a primary tool in our toolboxes when it comes to well-being. Tara, anything else you want to add on that, or just on this takeaway slide in general?
Yeah, no, I think these are all great, great takeaways. The mental health piece, I think in particular, is sometimes a little bit confusing to people what the research is saying. Krista, I don't know if you find this, but so we're not saying to people, oh, just think happier thoughts and you'll be happier, or you won't have depression, or you won't have anxiety, right? But it's more that positive emotions generally, as Krista was talking about before, they serve as a protective factor, right? It's sort of part of that upward spiral that once you have that, you are sort of, it is a protective factor against mental illness. And so that, I think that is just helpful in terms of how we might think of it and how we might think of it working, right? It's sort of different than thinking about it as sort of a treatment or a way of dealing with mental illness.
A piece of the puzzle, certainly, one of many pieces. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. All right. I think we can move on to the next slide here. And the how, yeah. So hopefully we've convinced you, if you weren't convinced already, of just the importance of positive emotions for our well-being. So let's get to the fun stuff now, the how. What does this look like in action? What does it look like to put positive emotions into practice and cultivate them in intentional support of our well-being? So we have some examples prepared to share with you. Tara, we can go to the first one.
Yeah.
Prepared.
So we kind of went back through to the same emotions that we were talking about before. Kind of go through and workshop and think about what are some things that we might be able to do to practice creating a, practice these individual emotions. So one of the things that I like to highlight here when I talk about practicing positive emotions in particular is it's a little bit like you're practicing the positive emotions and then you're kind of savoring that positive emotion that you generated. So a lot of these practices kind of have both of those elements, right? You identify the things that bring you joy, like say there are certain songs that you include in a playlist, and then you know that you can kind of keep going back to that as a way of kind of generating or kind of savoring that positive emotion. So I think a playlist is a great example of that, right? You think of songs that make you feel joy, certainly random acts of kindness, kindness in general, I think tends to make people feel joyful. Other types of arts and humanities consumptions, consuming art, I think, not limited to the, going to museum and looking at paintings, because that may not make everyone feel joyful, right? But thinking maybe you love comedy clubs, or maybe you love, like there's a comedy special on HBO that you like, right? It can be kind of consuming art in its broadest possible form. So let's see. Do you have anything else to add to that, Krista?
I don't think so. Just a reminder again that this looks different for everybody, right? So as we continue to go through these examples and different positive emotions, some of these examples might resonate with you, others might not. You might have other strategies, but again, just a way to sort of demonstrate how varied these experiences are person to person. All right, next up is gratitude. Tara, you used the word saturated earlier to describe gratitude, and I think that's a really appropriate one. And I think it's one of those things where we hear a lot about gratitude for good reason. It's a really potent and long lasting in terms of its positive effects on us, positive emotion. So we hear a lot about it. We hear a lot about different practices. Here are some examples of ways that we can practice gratitude. The first one, gratitude journaling. I think this is probably the one we hear the most about of this positive emotion we hear the most about. So it's really just reflecting on and writing down things that you're grateful for, and on as much of a regular basis as you can, really making a practice out of that journaling. The next one we have here is a gratitude letter writing exercise. So writing a letter to someone who has had a positive impact on you, whether it be big or small. We know that the actual act of writing the letter itself can have a positive impact on you as the writer. Of course, there is added benefit if you actually go and deliver that letter to the person, on both you and, of course, the person who is receiving that gratitude letter. It always feels good to get a thoughtful thank you note. And then finally, 3 good things. This is another one that I think I hear about a lot. It's the idea of, whether it's around the dinner table with family each night, or even just reflecting to yourself at the end of the day before you go to bed, thinking through what are 3 good things that happened today. And a key to success with this exercise is to actually also think about why those good things happened. So take it a step further. Think about what are 3 good things that happened to me today, and why did they happen? And again, those can be big or small, but just taking that moment to focus your attention on what's going well can over time really change your mindset and your perspective as a whole as you go throughout your day. Tara, anything you'd add on that one?
No, I think that those are all great. I have the most success with this myself. Like, gratitude is something that I think comes more natural to me, but I think the 3 good things, like particularly as part of a conversation, like talking about it with family or getting into kind of a habit of asking it every night, is has been more successful for me and my family than some of the other strategies, just because it seems easier to work it in, and kids tend to, I think especially, really enjoy it. They like talking about something good that happened during their week, and it really sort of changes not just I think not just the focus on gratitude, but the tone of what you talk about at dinner with your family sometimes, which is really nice. All right, let's see. Moving on to awe. So awe is the positive emotion I think that comes the least naturally to me. So I'm very curious about this myself. And one of the things that is seems to be the most effective, and at least in my anecdotal experience watching people, is amateur awe photography, right? And again, this gets back to that issue of not just enjoying in the moment, but actually kind of savoring that positive emotion also, right? So people who just say, okay, every day when I walk my dog, I'm going to snap one photo of something beautiful, right? And then at the end of the year, I think people did this quite a bit during the pandemic, right? But they have this beautiful collage of all of these photos that they've snapped. So they get that sort of in the moment appreciation and kind of cultivating, like thinking about, focusing on, okay, what is it in the space that is beautiful, right? And kind of focusing on always finding that, and then also being able to go back and appreciate it later, maybe when it's cold and winter and the flowers aren't blooming anymore. But and then looking up, right? Taking time. I mean, this gets a little bit, I think, to the mindfulness piece that Barbara Fredrickson was talking about, that concept of kind of mindfulness, and maybe not in a traditional practice sense, but just being in the moment where you're focusing on what's going on right now, that taking that time, taking that pause to kind of look around and say, maybe you have one question that you ask yourself. And maybe it's not, what am I awed by here, right? Because that doesn't sound like something that someone would actually say, but what do I find beautiful here? What's spectacular, what's interesting, what's compelling to me, right? What is the question that you can ask yourself that generates that? And then taking a nature walk, right? Again, good for us for a lot of reasons, but really savoring that beauty. Many people, when they talked about awe, identified something in nature, right? Something that was vast, something that was that made them really feel how kind of small they are in the world compared to sort of the vastness and the awesomeness of nature. How about you, Krista? Anything to add to that?
I was just thinking that too, Tara, while people were sharing their ideas about awe earlier in the presentation, how much of it related to nature and just the beauty around us. And I think what's so great about that is that's something, we don't need to download an app or subscribe to something to be able to access, right? It's all around us, and we just have to take that moment to really tune into it and recognize it.
Okay.
All right, now for the really fun part. So hopefully what we just shared sparked some ideas for you, because what we have here next is an exciting opportunity for you all to put these ideas into action. And we talked about this, or it was referenced in the program description when you all registered for this session, but we wanted to make this really actionable and feel practical to you. So the idea here is to take the next month to put some of these ideas into practice. So here's how it's going to work. First, you're going to pick a positive emotion to focus on for the month. And we've included a list across the bottom of the slide there of some of the more popular positive emotions for you to consider as a starting point. So pick a positive emotion, then you're going to pick a daily practice. So choose any exercise that is going to allow you to experience that positive emotion that you selected on a daily basis. Then you're going to do your best to do that practice of the positive emotion throughout the month of May. And finally, we hope you will join us for a quick debrief session at the end of the month on May 31st. We'll all get back together. And this will just be a time for us to talk about our experiences and, just share ideas and lessons learned from this month-long practice. So to just quickly recap, pick a positive emotion, pick a practice, try it for the month, and then join us on the 31st for the debrief session. And I see that Gretchen put a link to the registration page for that session on the 31st in the chat. So we're going to take questions in a moment, but first, Tara, I think you have some keys to success to share.
Yes. So this, just as a general matter, does not need to be time consuming. It can be quick. You should make it something that you believe that you will be able to do from the beginning, right? So something that takes a few seconds, a few minutes is great. Find somebody that wants to do this too, right? It's great to, I think, incorporate a friend or a family member, a colleague, right? Spread the, this practice around. It really doesn't need to be perfect. This is not about perfect. This is about practice. And really the practice is all that matters in this piece. If you're a terrible photographer, but you want to take pictures of things that are beautiful, take your terrible, beautiful pictures. Like, that's great. It'll be perfect. And then attaching it to an existing daily habit is really great from the perspective of just habit formation, making it more likely that you will actually do it, right? So if you walk your dog every day and you can snap that photo, something beautiful while you're out, while you're walking your dog, that's great. If you can work your 3 good things into your drive home from soccer practice with your son or daughter or child, you are probably more likely to make it happen if it's attached to something that you're already doing every day. All right.
All right, and in case you still need a little more inspiration, here are some other examples of positive emotion exercises for you to consider. I just want to emphasize what Tara just shared. There's no one right, perfect way to do this, right? This is a choose your own adventure, do the best you can with it. You know, if you miss a day, it's not like it's all going to be for naught. Just do your best with it. And think of this as an opportunity to just try out what some of these practices can look like for you and see how you might be able to build an ongoing habit around it. Tara, anything else you'd add?
No, I think that all sounds great. I'm just trying to get out of the chat here. Okay, great. So from us tomorrow, you will receive an email that re-summarizes the practice, our little like mini experiment. And then you'll also receive this attachment, which has some additional things. Sometimes once you kind of slide into normal life, it's helpful to go back. There's a great, I particularly like this video, Finding Awe in the Ordinary. It is a great video from Iraq war veteran who is now a kind of nature education specialist, and they talk about really how to find awe in nature and some of the practices that they've used. I think it's a pretty compelling short video. So, but there's some other things too, and that you might want to check out. Some just little reminders, things to remember. And then there will also be in our email a link to a Google photo slideshow that we would love if you want to share your photos of your practices. If your practice is like petting your dog every night and you want to send us a picture of you with your dog, or if your practice is doing cartwheels in the front lawn, we would love to see a video of you doing your cartwheels. You don't really have to send us a cartwheel video, but anyway, whatever it is, we would love to see those, because it's a great way, I think, for other people to get a smile out of your joyful, awe-inspiring, and gratitude-filled moments as well. Let's see. And yeah, so thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Krista and I have time. We will stay on. We could talk about this all day long, so we would be happy to answer questions and chat to the extent people are interested.
Gretchen, did you have anything to share as well to kind of close us out?
Yeah, thanks so much, ladies. This was really informative and actually very uplifting to think about all these emotions and then what triggers those emotions. So it's been a nice little micro session in the middle of the day. Thank you. One of the things I wanted to mention is we are just kicking off Wellbeing in Law Week, and there are a lot of what we talked about here and how to develop these types of emotions to improve your well-being. There are different sessions on that during the week. So on writing, on regulating emotions, on songs and music, that sort of thing. So I'm going to encourage everyone to go to IWIL's site. So the Institute for Wellbeing in Law has a site that's lawyerwellbeing.net. You can find a lot of the other information. These are free to everyone to sign up. And in case you want to enhance some of your practices or learn a little bit more, all of that is out there for you. Now, I know we had a couple questions on whether there would be slides that would be shared. It seemed like everyone was interested in the content. I know that Ann Bradford, I saw a couple messages that we will do our best to turn this recording around and post it on lawyerwellbeing.net. But I didn't know if you had any thoughts on sharing your slide deck.
I think we can do that. And I'll also mention too that a lot of what we shared in this presentation today is going to be included in those follow-up emails that Tara mentioned. In addition to getting one from us tomorrow, we want to hopefully be helpful in reminding you to keep your practice going and sharing some keys to success throughout the month. So you'll be hearing from us a few more times as well. So you'll see this information throughout the rest of the month too. Were there any other questions that came in? I was scanning the chat. Thank you all so much for your kind words. I don't know if I saw any questions.
I didn't
I
pull
don't
any
know if I missed
questions.
anything.
either. Okay, I have a question for you, Krista.
All
What,
right.
I think we should pick things to practice, right? What are you gonna pick?
You know, I was actually really inspired by the awe examples. And I think similar to you, that's the one that, I mean, I wouldn't say I struggle with it, but I feel like I don't tune into it intentionally as often as some of the others. So I think I might try to do the amateur photography exercise, especially now that it's like actually starting to be pretty outside here in Minnesota. Again, I'm excited to really savor that. We're ready for it.
I'm with you. That's me too. I'm working on awe.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited to debrief with you on the 31st and everybody else here. Gretchen, thanks for dropping the registration link to that session here in the chat again. And just thank you so much, everybody, for being here. This, as you can tell, is a topic that Tara and I really adore. And it was just so fun for us to get to work together on this presentation and to be able to spend some time with you today chatting about it. So thank you.
We did get one question about how to register for the webinars. So many of the webinars, I believe, are in the individual section on the I Will website. So you may have to just look on that section of the site to register. They are free and they're open to everyone. So there was a question in the chat or in the Q&A just asked saying that someone had shared a link, but they didn't know where to look. So that's where
I'll see if I can get a link to that page here. I've visited it many times in the past few days, so it's probably up here. It is. I knew it would be in my history.
Yeah.
Gretchen can correct me if there's a different one.
Oh yeah, and Anne says it will be in the emails too.
Perfect.
And everyone, you don't have to do anything to register for the emails. If you registered for the webinar, you will receive the emails. So, yep. All right. Well, everybody have a super wonderful well-being week in law. Take some time and move slowly. It's a reminder.
Savor the day.
Yes, exactly.
And thank you so much, Gretchen, and to the Institute for inviting us to be here today. It was really a delight.
Thank you both for sharing. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.